Are you ready to live more authentically and explore who you truly are? Would you love to know how to get there? Hi, I am Jamie Graham Duprey, teacher, author, coach, and host of The Second Half. Throughout the show, we will consider how we can be people who show up honestly, speaking in truth and love, and vulnerably, sharing and reflecting on life experiences. You will be encouraged to make connections in your life that will dare you to explore powerful growth, personally, vocationally, and spiritually. Are you ready to consider how to develop and nurture a growth mindset, take ownership of your life, and create action steps that lead you to being bold, brave, and healthy? The second half starts now. Good morning and welcome to the show. I am Jamie Graham Duprey, and today we are going to talk about adult friendships. And I am very excited to have one of my longtime favorite friends, Peter Bennett Humphreys-Loving, on the show today. Peter, will you introduce yourself and say hello?
Hi, Jamie. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Peter. I'm been friends with Jamie for maybe 20 or so years, I think. There's probably some more accurate math in there, but we met our freshman year of college at Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana, and I'd say I hit it off immediately. I'm currently a counselor at a PK through 12 school in snowy Wisconsin. Pretty small private school in the woods, about 300 folks in all of those grades, and I kind of bounce around between all three divisions and tend to students and teachers and families and teach some leadership classes. I run a program with the middle schoolers we call Pine Rock Studios. That's an experiential leadership program using musical instruments to create bands and play rock and roll and who knows what else. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm
All right.
40.
You love being 40.
I love being 40. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before we put this show together, I have to add a guest, and I was adding Peter's bio, and I had to just fill something in, and it was pretty uh, low key and just kind of covering the bases. But I kind of wanted to read your bio this morning, Peter, that you texted me because I don't know if people will see it or not. So here's Peter's bio. Peter has been a guest for most of his 40 years on the planet. He enjoys decorative soaps. Do you? And eating chips. If you tell him to make himself at home, he is the only person that will comply. And boy, will you be sorry. So I love that. So, Peter, as you said, we met in college, and my second memoir, The Green-Clad Kicker, A True Story of Love, Faith, and College, has lots of stories where Peter is involved. He was not only my friend, but became best friends with my spouse, Jeremy, and they lived next door to me and to my roommate, Kat. Um, so, Peter and I have been talking about this show and prepping for the conversation on adult friendships. So, in the book, I have my version of how we met, but Peter, I'd love to hear what you remember first when we maybe some details of when we first got to know each other in college way back in 2002.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I showed up to school being a little bit driftless and not really knowing what I was doing there or doing at all. Um, yeah, I oftentimes tell the story about getting to college. I got on an airplane in Milwaukee and flew through Minneapolis to Billings, Montana, and showed up at the airport and realized that I didn't have a, pardon the bell there, didn't have much of a plan after that. And so I sat around at the airport for a while and eventually called Rocky on the school on the payphone and was like, "Can someone come and get me?" And they did, but that was kind of like the mindset that I was in showing up for school is I mean, I didn't have a whole lot planned out, including when someone asked me what my major was, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe that's the first time that I met Jamie because she basically came up and said, "Hey, you can come sit with us." And everybody was wearing the same colored t-shirt for freshman orientation, and I went and met I think met Jerry and Jamie and who else were you sitting with?
Maybe like Megan Torchalis. I don't remember all the folks.
Macy.
Oh, Macy, that would
and
make sense.
Macy, I think.
Yep.
So some folks that Jamie had already met through basketball, being on campus a little bit earlier. So I think about
Yeah.
it as being kind of rescued and scooped up, um, just by Jamie's being welcoming and saying, "Oh, here we go. I don't know what your take on that is, if that's how you remember it, but here's a lost person. Maybe I can help him be found."
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I remember sitting next to you and those bright yellow shirts. And then you were an education major at that point, just sort of by the way the situation played out. And so we had lots of classes together. We kept finding ourselves in similar spaces. It's a small campus, so we kind of knew everybody. And then several weeks later is when you met Jeremy, and Jeremy had a little bit of a confused understanding of who you were at first. Um, he was in choir with you, and and so yes, we were friends first. I always make sure I remind Jeremy and
Remind
Peter
Jeremy.
of
Yeah,
that. Yes, yeah, yeah. So what we were, we have been friends for I think close to 23 years, which sounds pretty wild. We were just 18 when we met, and through distance and all the seasons of life and the changes, our friendship has persevered. So I think that's just pretty cool, and this is fun to have this conversation with you. And also, we still talk on the phone frequently. So anyway, Peter, I just want to say thank you for your friendship.
oh my gosh, thank you. Thanks for rescuing me.
Yeah, yeah. So, any other stories? I just want to kind of hear your take on anything. As we read through the manuscript together before the book came out officially, I asked you for some thoughts and your insight and your memories. And what were some of the things that the book brought up for you?
I mean, it was one of the things from reading the first book too, but the second book as well, was that your voice comes through so clearly. It felt sort of like hanging out. But the big thing for me about the second book, you read a memoir about college life at a college that you went to with a friend that you were friends with, and you know, I found out so much more about
Mm-hmm.
you, and just even about perspective, I think, by reading that book. You got no idea what someone else's life is like when you're not with them, or when you're not seeing them. And well, I
Mm-hmm.
may have seen you come home from basketball practice all the time, or recognize that that's one of the things that you were committing so much time to. I didn't necessarily know all of the stories that were happening, or the feelings that were attached to the stories, or what was going on when basketball was making you happy or sad or mad. I didn't necessarily know why, and it's made me think about whether or not maybe you had intentionally compartmentalized that stuff, or if it was just like maybe you did talk a lot about it and I just wasn't listening. Certainly a possibility. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just also a good reminder just about how memory works too. If
Mhm.
we could two people at the same party, you can remember the thing totally differently. Um, you know, and also like the feelings that we attach to memories too can be really different depending on what our headspace was in. So
Yeah.
um yeah, that perspective piece was just huge for me. And part of it was just about like not realizing
Mhm.
and just feeling a little bit foolish about it in hindsight, and being like, wow, this was like basketball was a really huge thing in Jamie's life, and I don't know. I missed it. I went to games, but
You did.
games are such a small portion of what goes into playing a college sport. So it was,
Yeah.
I don't think I'd heard the whole story about the car accident, about the van
Mhm.
flipping, and that filled in a lot of gaps, but also was like, geez, have a close friend who went through some real trauma and like somehow missed it. Are you adjusting your shoulders here, thinking about your
They're a little sore when you talk
yeah,
about
all
the
of a sudden.
accident. No, I think that perspective is huge. And on my last show, I talked to Coach Henderson, who was in again a very different season of his life during that time. As an adult, he had his own kids, his own family, and you're absolutely right. It's powerful to think about things, shared experiences, but how we all have different takeaways and perspectives, and that's normal. That's okay. There's nothing to feel, guilty about or wonder what we missed, because everybody has their own story, if you will. And then you were a partner in crime, and basketball wasn't a huge part of the way you and I interacted, and that's how friendship works, right? We have different friends for different areas in our life, different seasons, people we go to about certain things, and others that we spend time with in specific ways. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
For sure. I mean, it's also like interesting to think about, you know, thinking about from last week's piece, like Hendo was Hendo an adult friendship for you when you were in college? Like maybe you didn't necessarily think about it like that, but like, this talking about adult friendships today, it's interesting to define that idea, um thinking about
Yeah.
both adults and friendships, but also like, oh, what's an adult? How do you know what the adult friendship is?
Oh,
Right? Like, well, Hendo like had little kids and was, you know, I don't know if
mhm.
he was in his 40s, coaching at a small school in Billings. Like, was he an adult? Did he feel like an adult? Did you feel like an adult hanging out with him?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, when we think about the adult friendship and trying to define it or box it in, that gets pretty complicated. But for us, when you and I have been starting to broach this topic, I know we've explored that 18-year-old. I would argue we were not adults, and and even the 22-year-olds who parted ways after graduation. Arguably, I don't know that I felt that way, but it is interesting seeing the different phases that we go through. So a couple of the themes that we talked about when we do wonder about adult friendships. I think this is something that's so important and can be a little overwhelming, and maybe we don't talk about it so specifically, but some of the words that came up for us was longevity piece. I think about commitment. I think about seasons, um, benefits and challenges, boundaries, capacity. There's just a lot that comes with this. So when we come back after this brief halftime intermission of the show, let's talk a little bit more about that, Peter, of the evolution of our friendship and what it looks like for us, and for others listening to consider all those things about friendships and tending to them.
Beauty. Seems like a good time for a break.
All right, sounds good. We will
I
be
mean, in the
back.
friendship.
Oh, cue intense music. Uh, all right, we will see you all in 2.5 minutes and find out what happens after this break. Hello, welcome back to the second half. I'm Jamie Graham Duprey here with one of my dear friends, Peter Humphreys-Loving, and we're talking about adult friendships. We met, I figured, about 23 years ago, and our friendship is still strong, and we're just kind of considering what that takes to persevere through the different seasons and times in life, especially in our case, living states away and having our own communities, our own families, our own jobs. There's lots of things that can make tending to a friendship difficult. Um, so, a question that you posed, Peter, when we were talking yesterday was, how do we respect each other's capacity? And then we also added that word boundaries. Would you share a little bit about that and your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that is one of the big pieces about adult friendship is that sort of feeling that folks our age especially have about time, right? Like
Mhm.
what do we have time for? It's certainly interesting that in the last 40 years of our lives, we've lived in the same state for 4 years, and that was seasonally. Um,
Mhm.
so mostly we've been managing a long distance friendship for,
Mhm.
for 22 years. And figuring out what there is space for in people's lives, There's
Mhm.
certainly some buzz about uh people saying that they're busy kind of feel like a dismissive thing.
Mm.
So like for me, thinking about capacity and boundaries is important for, gauging how you feel about your friendship with someone else. Um, I think one of the keys to adult friendship is certainly holding space for someone else, but also negotiating how you feel when they don't necessarily have capacity for you,
Mhm.
or if they're making boundaries with you that you don't necessarily love at first, or you might
Mhm.
somehow feel slighted by.
Yeah.
I don't know, if I'm not sure that we're the best model, but what we're doing works to some degree. So, I think about I'm not sure how we have kept boundaries
Mhm.
necessarily, but I think that there is the capacity that we've had for each other has certainly changed and shifted.
Yeah.
Um, Having kids and how much attention they need at different stages of their life. When I was partnered, I was married for, 4 years, and that kind of changes even availability, living with people versus not living with people, and how much attention the people in your lives need. And, for me, like I like to talk on the phone,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you like to talk on the phone.
Mhm.
Um, and, you know, mostly like I used to commute 2 hours each day. And
Mhm.
so that was this time that I could fill with checking in on folks, and also always knew that I could call tomorrow too if,
Yeah.
today didn't work out.
Yeah, that makes me think about sort of the unwritten terms, if you will. And so it is interesting to sit down here and talk about this so formally. But you're right, like the prioritization, the availability, how we're feeling in any given time for various reasons. And for us, I think I appreciate that we don't get offended. I think our intent and motivation is very clear. We care for one another. And there are many times where, we're having a conversation on the phone or something, and then one of us just needs to leave. And there's never any like, wait, I haven't finished. You're not listening. Or it's just like, hey, I got to go. And then click, we're all right, bye, love you. It's just real clear that we know that life is happening. And it's never about that we're deprioritizing each other or not important. It's just so interesting thinking about that. Nobody, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of spaces where we really clarify uh, friendship management once you are out on your own as an adult. It's tough enough when you're growing up and when you're an adolescent and all that, but then you add all the adult obligations, and man, it can be really easy to isolate.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was just thinking about how easy it is when it comes to adult friendships or long distance friendships to to say to somebody else, it didn't seem like you wanted to be friends anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like the likelihood of that being true is so low, but if you think about how in the
Mm-hmm.
last couple of years people start talking, I mean, talk more about ghosting, right? Like, oh, we had this relationship and then they ghosted me. I mean, I know that that's usually in the context of dating, but geez, doesn't it happen in adult friendships a ton too? Is that
Yep.
like
Mm-hmm.
if someone stops calling, or if someone doesn't respond to your text or doesn't call back, from your call, uh, it's like, oh yeah, I guess my friend just ghosted me, and that it's I mean, it's certainly interesting accusatory language to some
Yeah.
degree. right? Like somebody else did this to me, so even beyond capacity and boundaries, I think it's also about like responsibility and agency for, you know,
Mhm.
for what you are doing. And also it's like removing embarrassment about sending 3 texts in a row that don't get responded to.
Sure. I was just thinking about how difficult what our self-talk can be when maybe somebody doesn't respond to us. Or, I mean, this is real for me. Like, I'm somebody who remembers birthdays, especially of people I would say that I knew in the first 20 plus years of life. After that, it gets a little more
Yeah.
difficult. But, sending out a birthday, have a message that's important to me. But I will find myself sometimes like, this person hasn't responded in the last 3 times I've sent this, or gosh, they've never sent me a birthday. Am I bothering them? Is this, I don't know. There's that weird,
Right.
it,
Yeah.
so, but I think it's important to name there. Wonder about our own motivation. Well, why do I reach out? What's my motivation? What's my intent? And it's good. It's usually good. So when the resentment creeps in or threatens, I think an encouragement for us all would be to just give others the benefit of the doubt, and trust that the intent is good. They're not. It's not something personal. Usually, it's just because their own life is happening.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, you're right. There does kind of go back to self-talk, which is just bonkers stuff. When your move is like, does my best friend hate me? Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
they didn't call you back after 2 days? Unlikely,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
So.
think, and my thing has also been like, I think this is true of sibling relationships as well, which I think, in some
Mm,
ways are similar to adult friendships. But like, my question is always about, um, is it a surprise when they call? Do you
mm-hmm,
jump to the worst or assume the worst when they call? Like,
mm-hmm.
what kind of communication patterns do you have established? And I think
Sure.
those patterns are where it's at when it comes to maintaining, you know,
Yep.
a relationship. Even if the pattern is, oh, I call them every day. I mean, I call them every year the day after Christmas,
Right.
right? You know what's going to happen. You see that with adult friends. I think more and more is that people have the golf trip planned or
Sure.
the hunting trip planned or the girls trip planned or the beach vacation planned, with the same people sort of happening every year, every other year. And that's a pattern thing where like you have this specific carved out time that ends up being like a go-to fallback.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Peter, for talking about adult friendships with me. And we'll continue to unpack, I'm sure, on our next commute to work when we catch up. But for those listening, my encouragement is to think about some of these questions and things that we've covered when you consider your own friendships, your own needs, your own capacity, and really be gentle with yourself. I would say, but it is interesting and helpful to wonder about those relationships in your life, and how you're tending to them, what your needs are, how that is communicated. Um, because I would say, for the most part, we all want to be good friends, and we just need to understand that our capacity is limited and depends on the season. But that doesn't mean the friendship has to end. Peter, any final thoughts sending before we say goodbye for the day?
I mean, I think assume good intentions, right? And water your plants, take care of your friendships without blaming the other person for not tending to it. Be the friend that you want to be the friend that you want to have, and final thoughts are thanks for your friendship, Jamie.
Oh, yes, my pleasure. You too, Peter. Thanks for always being there, and showing up today. This was so fun.
Yeah.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
All right. Have a great rest of your week. And for those of us in these northern states, stay warm. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you for listening to the second half with me, Coach Duprey. Tune in on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month at 8 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio, where you will be encouraged to make connections in your life that will dare you to explore powerful growth personally, vocationally, and spiritually. For more information about me, my courses, my coaching, and my books, and how I can support you on your journey, find me on my website, coachdupre.com. See you next time.